Welcome to Nick on Knicks, where your boy N.I.C rants about the latest Knicks news. Knicks on the surface had a pretty decent week. They went 2-1. But Saturday night, the Knicks went into San Francisco. They played the Golden State Warriors. And once again, the Knicks on prime time against what many consider to be an elite team. And what did we see? We saw a Knicks team that didn't get embarrassed from the jump like they have in many of these primetime games against what people consider to be elite teams. But what we did see is our Knicks lose once again, 97-94. Now, we would be remiss not to throw out there that the Knicks are missing their best player, Jalen Brunson, a MVP candidate, a guy who obviously is extremely important to everything that the Knicks do. That's true. But it's the late game execution. It is wilting under the bright lights, and it's not being able to get over the hump against these elite teams that continues to be a narrative throughout this entire season. And honestly, if you're a Knicks fan, you have to be honest with yourself. I personally don't feel like this team has any chance of winning a championship this year. I don't know how you could feel really any other way. At this point, these Knicks have shown you nothing to believe that in the second round, if they meet a Cleveland or a Boston, that they have any chance of winning that series. Let's keep it real. The Knicks had an exciting win earlier on the week. Mikal Bridges with a down by 2 pull-up 3 at the buzzer of overtime for the Knicks to win the game 114-113 against the Portland Trail Blazers. So the Knicks have that exciting win. A win against the Portland Trail Blazers team that many people, I know their record's not great, but when you watch them play, and Breen mentioned this multiple times throughout the telecast, they play hard, man. Chauncey Billups has got those boys playing. That kid Avita, he seemed like he has gotten to a new level. Scoot was doing his thing. And the Knicks were able to pull that game out. And it really felt like, to me, going up against the Golden State Warriors on Saturday, a team that is 11-1, now 12-1, since they acquired Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat just before the trade deadline. So they're an elite team. And you're playing against them after the resident NBA asshole, Draymond Green, goes out. He makes the comments that Cat was scared because Jimmy Butler was going to be in the building. And that is why he missed our last matchup just about 10 days ago against the Golden State Warriors, because according to Draymond Green, he heard Jimmy was going to be there. Now we know that Cat missed that game due to his longtime girlfriend. I'm not sure if she's a fiance, but Jordan Woods. Her aunt died of breast cancer. And Cat missed the one game to be with her and attend the funeral and just, support his woman. Draymond was made aware that that was the reason that Cat was not available. Draymond doubled down in his comments saying, well, that's just what I heard. Added in some sort of caveats and, some disclaimers about, you don't ever want to see whatever the bullshit he said. But he did not come out and say, you know what, my bad. I shouldn't have said that. That was incorrect. He says, hey, well, that's what I heard. And made sure that he promoted his shit podcast a couple times after that as well. And you would think that this Knicks team would come out with a certain edge. And you know what? For the most part, I thought the Knicks played hard. I thought the defense was okay. I thought the defense was actually pretty good overall. Steph Curry was human. He ends up with 28 points on 8 of 20 shooting, 4 of 13 from behind the arc. Deuce played excellent defense on Steph throughout. And overall, the Knicks team did enough to be in the game in the fourth quarter. Down the stretch of the fourth quarter, the execution, it was lacking. Once again, we have trouble inbounding a ball in a key moment. The Knicks haven't run an inbound play that was effective since before the Tom Thibodeau era. I don't really get what's going on, why it is that we can't inbound a fucking basketball. Josh Hart runs with the ball on the baseline against Portland. That's a traveling violation. But also right there, we don't call a timeout, and our inbound play is basically Bridges, shake your guy and get open, which often it's Brunson in that position where the inbound play is just, hey, Brunson, there's no picks being set. There's no down screen with the guy popping out, nothing like that. And it seems to be something that is a consistent theme with the Knicks. We can't inbound the basketball. It's so frustrating to watch. And then last night when we're down 92-88, we have a side out of bounds. We turn the ball over. We don't run a play. It's just guys kind of just, hoping that they get open. And we turn the ball over. Game's over pretty much at that point. And Karl-Anthony Towns, as Mr. Lycan, 329, says Cat played well this game. The Bridges and the Harts of the world, they didn't step up. Bridges ended up with 19 points. Josh Hart had a rough game. He had a rough game as far as, putting the ball in the basket. He was 0 of 7 from the field. He mixed in 7 rebounds and 7 assists, a steal and a block. He was -5 for the game. 0 points. I mean, 0 for 7 from the field. You don't get to the free throw line. The 2 turnovers, Josh Hart is good for a boneheaded turnover at least once a game. Just wasn't Josh Hart's night. Mikal Bridges, overall, his efficiency wasn't horrible. Bridges gave you 19 points on 8 of 14 shooting. My issue with Bridges is I need 20 shots. With no Brunson, I need 20 shots from you. I need you to start getting 15 to 20 shots even when Brunson comes back. But when there's no Brunson, I need 20 shots from you every single night. It's the same story with Bridges that we've seen all season on the offensive end. Some nights the aggressiveness is there. Some nights it's just not. But this Knicks team, you would think, would come out with a certain edge and have something to prove after this guy Draymond runs his mouth and disrespects their brother, Karl-Anthony Towns. And then when given the facts, he can't even walk it back. He's still got to be an asshole. And after the game, Karl-Anthony Towns is clearly disgusted. He walks off the floor. Let's call it what it is. Down the stretch, Karl-Anthony Towns had some plays where he, first of all, put himself in foul trouble early on in the game by picking up 3 fouls in the first half. One of those, a silly foul where Draymond basically baits him into the foul, and then after the call is made is telling him, go to the bench, and clapping and shit. And Karl Anthony Towns gets in his face basically like, man, yo, fuck you. And if with everything that's happened, I totally understand Cat coming at him that way and being quick on that trigger. But the actual foul, which was actually a bad call, but you can't put yourself in that situation, Cat. You can't even be doing nothing where you're walking up and trying to get an arm on Cat, on Draymond far away from the basket and impede. Who cares if he catches it out there? He ain't doing nothing with it. And then late in the game, one of the plays that sealed the game was Draymond taking Cat to the basket and laying the ball up, and Cat is unable to affect the shot at all. I don't know why at that point you're not just willing to get a foul if need be, and also willing to deliver a hard foul against this guy because of everything that's happened. There's no way I'm letting that guy lay that ball up if I am Karl Anthony Towns in that situation. Fucking foul him. Draymond did hit 2 free throws down the stretch. You're hoping for him to miss at least one. He goes there and calmly hits 2. And there was another play down the stretch that drove me crazy where there's a pick and roll and Deuce and Cat are worried more about Draymond than they are about Steph Curry in the pick and roll. It leads to a Steph 3. Guys, let Draymond catch the ball out by the 3-point line. Treat him like they treat Josh Hart. And give all of the attention to Steph. I mean, come on. Listen, Tibbs has to be talking to him about shit like that. Has to be. I believe so. But we routinely make mistakes like that, especially at ends of games where we're not guarding the other team's personnel with any type of mindfulness of this guy is this. It's like when Josh Hart switched off of Beasley to go to Tim Hardaway Jr., and it ends up with Beasley getting a wide open 3 in the corner and a loss that we had earlier this year against Detroit. You have to know that you step at Tim Hardaway, make him take the shot, as opposed to the guy who's made more threes than anybody else in the league. These seems like things that should be second nature, that should be understood, especially by these accomplished ball players. But the Knicks routinely, in those types of situations, seem like they have no scouting report. They don't know what's going on. And I'm fairly sure Tibbs is prepared, and he is giving them the scouting report. He is telling them, hey, I mean, no one should have to explain to you that you need to pay close attention to Steph Curry behind the 3-point line. Come on. No one should have to explain that to you. It's another tough loss, and then to me, it's compounded by what happens after the game. Cat storms off the floor. He's disgusted. Obviously, this was personal to him. He had a pretty good fourth quarter, 11 points. Statistically, he had a very good game overall. I won't even say statistically. Cat played well. 29 points, 7 of 12 from the field, 3 of 5 from behind the arc. 12 of 21. No, I'm sorry. 12 of 21 from the field, 3 of 5 from behind the arc. He had 12 rebounds, 7 of those defensive, 5 of those on the offensive glass. Fourth quarter, he had 11 points. Had a couple big threes in the fourth that he missed that really could have changed the game. Overall, Cat played well. If anything, I would have just liked to see Cat shoot more and play more. He only played 29 minutes due to his foul trouble. And we needed more. We needed more Cat tonight. He's got to be a little bit smarter when it comes to some of the stupid early fouls that he picks up. Without Brunson, dog, we can't have games where if you're out for, more than the allotted, if you're getting 30 minutes as opposed to 35, 36, with no Brunson, it's going to be tough for the Knicks to win these games. It's going to be tough for us to generate the offense that we need. And you see that with us only scoring 94 points. The defense is not the problem here. It's gotten better. Since Mitch has come back, we're 4th in defensive rating when we were in the mid to late 20s prior. So the defense has gotten better. Some of that is Brunson not playing here recently. Deuce being on the floor instead of Brunson. He's a better defender than Brunson. Brunson tries his best, but his size it puts them at a huge disadvantage on D. All right. Well, I keep going on tangents away from this, but after the game, you got many players: Mitchell Robinson, Mikal Bridges, I think maybe Josh Hart as well. Also, new arrival, supposed enforcer, PJ Tucker. They're all walking up to this guy, Draymond, dapping him up, giving him hugs. Honestly, man, fuck that shit. Karl Anthony Towns has been a Knick for about 3/4 of a season. Obviously, I don't know the man personally. Can't say I was a huge fan of his prior to him coming to the Knicks. But the closest connection we have, other than him playing for the Knicks, is we grew up fairly close to each other, about 15 minutes away from each other in New Jersey. And I have more loyalty and more hatred to this guy, Draymond, than his own teammates do. How is it that these guys, after what Draymond said, and the fact that he was unwilling to walk it back afterwards, how is it that these guys are willing to dap this guy and be friendly with this guy and share a moment and smile after the way he just disrespected your teammate? Yo, fuck all that, man. You see, this right here is what this Knicks team is missing. Last year's team does not do that. I'm sorry, they don't. DiVincenzo at some point probably would have gotten face to face with Draymond, and just the and Julius definitely would not be having that shit. There's an energy around this team that is just different than it was last season. We had more dog, more fight, whatever you want to call it. Last year's team is not dapping this guy up and hugging him up after the game. They're just not. This year's team, they just operate differently. It's crazy what just a couple changes in personality can do to the overall makeup and disposition of your entire team. Ragu, Julius, Hartenstein, they're not all tough guys. They all played with force. They all were willing to get in somebody's face if necessary and make sure that they stood up not only for themselves, but for their teammates. This year's team is devoid of those types of players and of that type of attitude overall. They are. I don't care what you say, man. Say what you want. I'm not going to say we're not soft. I wouldn't say this team plays soft. But they lack an edge. And I don't see us doing anything of significance until we address that. Is that adding players with a little bit more edge in the offseason? I don't know. But Josh Hart's inability to shoot, Mikal Bridges' reluctance to be aggressive on a nightly basis, and the inconsistency in output from our bench, those things they're major impediments from us being able to get to and conquer the mountaintop. And, there was a time earlier in this season where if you asked any Knicks fan, did we win the trade? The Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo trade, with what was going on over there and with the rousing success that we were having over here, don't get it twisted. We still have the 4th best record in the league. So the sky's not falling. But this team does not have that same grit. And if you asked most people a couple months ago who won the trade, it would be overwhelmingly the Knicks. Do you still feel that way right now? Julius is balling. Minnesota has gone on a bit of a little win streak here. I know at one point they had won like their last 10 games that Julius played. Dante DiVincenzo, after, some struggles early and some struggles with his shot, is starting to find it. Can you say very matter-of-factly that we won that trade? Right now, I don't know if you can. And I love everything that Karl Anthony Towns brings on the offensive end. I think his defense has gotten a little bit better here recently. I think the return of Mitch, not just when they're on the floor together, but somehow through osmosis, he's become a better defender. I've seen him make more on-time rotations. I've seen him challenge people at the rim. I've seen him, be able to go straight up and sometimes avoid that foul that he was getting nonstop earlier in the season. I've seen all those things. So I give him credit where it's due. But in the biggest moments last night, he gets beat off the dribble for a layup by Draymond. And some of those late threes that he took, they didn't drop. Last night was the night that Cat had 29. We needed Cat to, first of all, stay on the floor and not get into foul woes. And we needed like 40 from Cat last night. That was the time. This guy done disrespected you, calling you out for being soft and scared of Jimmy Butler. We all have heard about the relationship between Karl Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler when they were both in Minnesota, the infamous practice where Butler comes out with a bunch of guys who are at the bottom of the roster, two-way G League type players, takes on the starters, runs them off the court, does an interview with Rachel Nichols at his house like less than an hour left, the hour afterwards. Jeff Teague talking about that. Jeff Teague, quite a storyteller, that guy. Is very good. But we all know about that history. And now you got this guy, Draymond, making these wild comments that you are not at the game because you hear Jimmy's coming. He's saying that you were so scared of this man that you told the Knicks you had to be out for personal reasons. The world finds out that's all bullshit. You're supporting your longtime girlfriend after the death of her aunt. And this guy doesn't walk it back. And now you get to come out on national TV without Brunson. This was the night you needed to drop 40. And you definitely did not need to have Draymond Green beat you off the dribble and get a layup to basically put the game away in the waning moments. It's not good, man. I know, listen, if you want to look for silver linings, if you want to look for, things to gain in a loss, did we lose by only 3 to a team that's red hot and one of the better teams in the league since the trade for Jimmy Butler? Did we figure out a way to do that without our best player, our leading scorer, leading distributor, our captain, Jalen Brunson? All those things are true. But it's getting to a point where it's just like, man, hey, man, we have to figure out a way to beat one of these elite teams, especially on national TV, because come in the playoffs, that's all it's going to be. And in the second round, I think we need to stop talking about the second round. Because if we play Detroit in round 1, that's going to be a tough series for the Knicks. Detroit has size at the point guard in Cade Cunningham against the diminutive Jalen Brunson. And they've surrounded him with athletes and shooters. And those are the things that we struggle with the most. Every team seems to be able to just get straight to the rim and lay the ball up without any type of resistance against the Knicks. And the Knicks seem to get their shot blocked at the rim or put up some flim-flam bullshit so often. It's crazy, man. It's really sometimes very hard to understand why it is that, you know, some of these guys, like last night in that game, I saw, who was it? I don't know if it was, because it wasn't even like, it was Gary Payton. Gary Payton the second, right? I saw him just go to the rim and just lay a cat. And I'm like, Deuce never does that. Never. He's just as athletic. He's got long arms, big hands, all those things. But it just seems like we have such a hard time and everything is so difficult for us on the offensive end. And some of that is we don't run plays. We run sets. Other teams run elaborate plays. We run sets. Again, the inability to inbound the ball. I'm putting that on Tibbs, man. Tibbs, we gotta draw something up when it comes to inbounds that makes it a little bit easier for us, because it seems easy for everybody else. But we in big moments, we either can't get it in or it's a turnover. And I've watched it, I have studied it. We don't run plays on inbounds. It's Brunson get open, and if Brunson's not in, then it's Bridges get open. And I don't get it. I don't get why we can't set a screen, set up a stack. I coach 8-year-olds and we run a stack inbound play. I think the New York Knickerbockers and Tom Thibodeau should be able to figure that out. So the Knicks go 2-3 on their 5-game West Coast trip. This next week, they basically crisscross the country. They play Miami, then they play the Spurs, then they play Charlotte. Spurs and Charlotte on back-to-back, which is crazy. And the Knicks have lost 4 and 6, and if they don't right the ship here soon, stuff's going to start looking real bleak. It looks like Brunson is still a couple weeks away. They originally said a week. That was, just over a week ago, or basically a week ago. And now it's, it sounds like it's probably going to be at least another 2 weeks from today, but that they are fairly optimistic about the timeline, and they are somewhat relieved with the overall sprain and the fact that it wasn't a higher grade sprain. There's no structural damage, and that it wasn't a high ankle sprain. It looks like it was lower. Oh man, I just it's frustrating with this team, because last year's team was so lovable in the way that they played. They played with a certain level of intensity. They played hard every single night. They played defense, and they had some edge to them. And this year's team, it feels like the ceiling is higher because they're just more talented. Bridges is more talented than DiVincenzo. Karl Anthony Towns is more talented than Isaiah Hartenstein or Julius Randle on the offensive end. But I don't have the same, I don't love this team the way I loved last year's team. They're missing that grit. They're missing that personality that made them so loved by New York City and, the Knicks fans abroad. And I don't know if it's in their makeup. Bridges is a nice guy. Bridges sometimes, you forget he's out there. He's parked in the corner, but it's not just that the set or the offense, the system that we're running. Some of it's just his lack of aggressiveness. I've seen him catch the ball behind the three-point line with a guy right up on him, and as opposed to being like, okay, I'm going to go by you, he's literally doesn't even look at the basket. He's just looking to get rid of it. I don't get that. Bridges, we just saw your best game of the season. You dropped 33 points against the Blazers. You hit a buzzer beater. Had me and my son going crazy. Knicks fans all over the place, rejoicing. I mean, just a great shot, a great moment, something that, especially me getting to share it with my little guy, man, like something I'll always remember. And we follow that up with a uninspired, an offensive performance that just lacked any sort of aggressiveness or oomph. There weren't times where you just felt like he was cooking. He was, taking over the game. He wasn't trying to impose his will on the game like we know that he can. He has all the requisite skills. He just doesn't do it. I don't know, man. I just, I'm expecting Bridges to at some point just kind of flip a switch and be the guy that he has been before. I mean, the guy scored over 25 points a game at one point in his career. We need that number up around 20. Even when Brunson's back, he's been a little bit more aggressive here and there. And last night, I know that, he had 19 points, but you watched that game and he was not aggressive enough. He shot 14 times. I need more than 14 shots from you when Brunson's not playing. OG continues to be much more of an impact player on the offensive end. His defense is always there. I'll say this. He hasn't been crazy impactful on defense as consistently this year as I would like. Recently, he has turned it up. He's also scored 20, I think, in at least like 4 of the last 6 games, might be like 5 of the last 7. 23 points last night, 7 of 15. He's 2 of 3 from behind the arc. OG's forays to the basket, man, and the attempts that he puts up sometimes are in the paint. It's hard to understand. Look, with OG, I'm saying this to my pops last night. The biggest thing about OG is that he can't dribble the ball twice. If he has to dribble the ball more than once, the attempt, the percentages of it going in just absolutely fall off a cliff. He's always taking these long strides where he's, trying to jump up from like a crouched position, and he ends up taking a layup well below the net that just gets tossed up there, and he kind of hopes it goes in. It might hit the glass and not even draw iron and come off on the other side. It might bounce around and in. But overall, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing from OG recently. He's playing strong D. He's getting you the buckets that you need. You're not asking for a ton of points from OG, but he's been very capable here recently. And he had 9 big rebounds yesterday, which I think that is one of the biggest keys, is that we need OG, especially if he's going to be our starting power forward. We need him to be involved on the glass. Can't be 2 or 3 rebounds from you, OG. It's minimum got to be 5 or 6. And I love when it's 9. 2 assists, 3 steals, and a block for OG. I thought he played pretty well. I think Hart had a really tough night. I think Bridges needed to be a lot more aggressive. I liked what I saw out of Deuce. 19 points for Deuce, 3 of 6 from behind the arc. He added 4 steals, 5 rebounds to that. Mitchell Robinson looked gassed. He didn't look like himself, which is weird because we hadn't played since Wednesday, and this game is on a Saturday. And you think that, he would get plenty of rest and he would, he'd be able to get out there and have an impactful game. There was times where they were saying it on the telecast, he looked gassed. He was being lazy on defense. He was not the typical Mitch that you're used to seeing. I thought Shamet played well. Landry Shamet, he only had 2 points. No, hold on. We gotta be. Oh no, we're in all periods. Shamet only had 2. It felt like Shamet had more than 2. Really, it did. But he did have 3 rebounds. I thought Shamet played well. Campaign, 0 for 4 from 3. When he's missing his threes, he's kind of useless. I mean, he plays hard on defense, but he doesn't really affect the game that much. Offensively, he can get you into your offense, but, it's not like he's out here dropping dimes. He had 1 assist and 0 for 4 from 3. We could have really used a couple of those, especially, late in that third quarter. And then Precious Achiuwa, again, Precious, one of those players, as soon as you start to ask too much of him, you start to see all of his weaknesses and deficiencies. He was 0 of 1 from the field. They don't guard him. Him and Josh Hart, the defense has figured out that we just don't have to guard you. And we continue to play them away from the basket, which I think both of them on offense should be more so in like the dunker spot. And other teams allow that to shrink the floor on our shooters. The spacing struggles. I know Josh Hart gives you a lot. I know that he can have a big rebound that could win a game for you. I think that we really have to look at when Brunson gets back to close games, running a lineup where we have our starting five, except Deuce is in for Josh Hart playing the two. It's something that has to be at least experimented with when we get Brunson back. Shout out to my guy Keith Watkins, as always. Greetings from the ATL. Hey, appreciate you, Keith. He's always in here. He's always showing love. Very much appreciate you, sir. Yeah, I mean, this is another week where you see some positives, but when it comes down to it, this consistent theme of us not being able to beat the best teams in the league, of us losing to them on national television, and this game, the fact that we lost to Draymond after all the drama between him and Kat, after him making those asshole comments and then refusing to walk them back, and then the fact that our guys are dapping him up and hugging him after the game. It's embarrassing, man. It's not the type of attitude that I want from my team. I think, I realize that I'm old, and the modern NBA, these guys are a lot more chummy, a lot more friendly with each other than they once were. I saw Gary Payton talking about the All-Star game. He said the reason that it was different back then is because we didn't like each other and we didn't want to lose. These guys now, they don't feel that way. And the fact that Karl Anthony Towns being disrespected the way that he was by Draymond, the fact that doesn't make all of his teammates have a little more edge to them in the game and say, fuck this guy after the game, but they want to go dap him up and they're smiling and shit. PJ Tucker, you supposed to be our enforcer? Come on, man. I'm not a fan. I wasn't a fan of how that was handled by our team. I would hope that we would have some more togetherness, some more love for our guy Cat, because he wasn't about that. And I just don't feel like sometimes both the losses and the way we lose that they piss these guys off enough. Brunson seems pissed after losses. The Cats, the Bridges, the Josh Harts of the world, I don't always feel like they hate losing enough. Like they're willing to do whatever. We have to step up our aggressiveness, our physicality, and our just overall force if we want to accomplish anything. And maybe these guys just aren't made up that way. Maybe Tibbs can't get that out of them. I'm a Tibbs guy overall. There's certain things that drive me nuts. The lack of inbound play, the unwillingness to trust a guy like a Dottier or a Kolick, get them in during certain times, maybe, develop them a little bit. And now at the end of the season, they could be somebody that you could look to for quality minutes. The running of offensive sets and no real plays, especially in the fourth quarter when the game is close. We're not deliberate enough on offense. We don't dictate enough on offense. And other teams dictate to us offensively. They run plays with multiple layers that get them the type of shot that they want. And defensively, they hunt out a Josh Hart 3 as what we end up with on our offensive possession. And too often that they get exactly what they want. So Josh Hart, hey man, I'm glad to see you shooting the 3 a little bit more with regularity. PJ Tucker's yelling at him, shoot the fucking ball. I'm glad to see him shooting them more, but if he's not going to hit them late in games, you have to look at getting the optimal spacing on the floor and having 5 shot makers on the floor. That opens things up for the Brunsons and the Cats and the Bridges of the world. And when that ball gets kicked to Deuce as opposed to Josh Hart, we know that it's got a much better chance of going in. And Josh Hart, I'd say he's a slightly better than average defender, but he's not always a very smart defender. He occasionally does some shit in the game where he's being way too aggressive for no reason and gets himself out of position and ends up in a layup for the other team. He's got to be better at that. He's got to be better at leaving his feet and then trying to figure out where he's given up the ball and it ends up in a turnover. This Knicks team has a ton of talent on the offensive end. Bridges needs to act like it on a more consistent basis. We need to feature Cat more, especially in the fourth quarter. I don't understand why we're running pick and rolls where Josh Hart is setting the pick. We did this with Brunson. We do it with Bridges. And then basically what you're doing is you're just allowing the other team to double them coming off that pick because they're not worried about Josh Hart and his ability to pop and hit a three. I don't know why that's not Karl Anthony Towns setting that pick. The Brunson Cat pick and roll has fantastic numbers across the season. Down the stretch of games, we don't run it. Somebody explain that to me. Against Portland, in the waning moments of regulation, the Knicks are inbounding the ball, and Josh Hart needs to know the rules and know that he can't move on the baseline off of a dead ball. I mean, just, guy, come on. You got to know better than that. But there's 7 seconds left. We have 2 timeouts, and we can't advance the ball with a timeout because it was after a side out. It wasn't after a make. But right there, I've watched it over and over again. Basically, Bridges goes to the elbow and just tries to move and, get open. Like he's, playing wide receiver and pick up football. Right there. If I'm Tom Thibodeau, 1, 2, 3, timeout. If we're not getting the ball in immediately, call a timeout, set up a play. I mean, basketball 101, 2 guys on the elbow. Have them both break to the corner. Have one guy come over and screen for this guy so he's now coming at the basketball. Have a big man flash to the middle. And then have that other guy streak up the sideline. It's basketball 101. It's how you beat a press. Add in a couple wrinkles. Whatever the case may be, just don't call nothing. I don't get it. Down 4 with a little over a minute to go. We can't get the ball in. Turnover. Why is this such an issue? This was an issue for us last year in the playoffs against Indiana. It was an issue for us multiple times this season down the stretch. And it was an issue for us last year. And I feel like the year before, it's been like forever. Run some inbound plays, please. I don't understand what's so hard about that. If you're checking out the content and you like what you hear, share it with your friends. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, especially. That's where you will get notification that we're going live. I do this podcast, Nick on Knicks, usually a few times a week. I also do He Did This to Me with my dad. We do that once a week. We just hit episode 80. We haven't missed a week yet. Knock on wood. And yeah, man, it's me, him talking Knicks, Mets, and Jets, as well as just about the latest major sports stories of the day. Appreciate all the love. And, talk to me, man. Talk to me in the comments. Tell me, what do you think about this Knicks team? Do you think that this team has legit championship aspirations this season? And if not, what do we need to add to be able to get there? Because we're not adding another big piece unless we get rid of somebody. And I don't see that happening. So what it's going to really come down to is what, role players, salary cap's going to go up a little bit. So we're going to have a little bit more space. Or is it that we need certain guys on our team to level up? And maybe not necessarily skill-wise, but mentality-wise. I love Cat. I really do like him. I like his game. I like his personality. I like the joy that he plays with. I could see how, 5 or 7 years down the road, you say, I know, man, this guy puts up stats and he's good and all that, but can he be, one of the two best players on a championship team? I could see that. Because as much as he has put up great numbers this year, he doesn't have a lot of signature clutch moments this season. And he does have some moments in the clutch, especially defensively, where he's been exposed. Draymond exposed him yesterday. He should be so fucking mad at himself, at the outcome of that game, and he should be mad at his teammates, honestly. I'm sorry, but if y'all are yucking it up with this dude right after the game, after this whole drama that ensued here recently, me personally, we got to talk about this in the locker room. We're gonna talk about this, and or I might just keep it to myself. But I realize like these guys don't rock with me quite as tough as I thought they did. That's how I would feel personally. You saw Tibbs and Josh Hart. They got into a huge back and forth. They were yelling at each other in the game. Both of them downplayed it after the game. Just a couple competitors in the middle of, a heated battle, and they had a heated exchange. And I think that's a non-story. If you ever played sports, man, like that shit like that happens. It's not, don't mean that y'all don't like each other. You just fired up in the moment. You get a little bit back and forth. Maybe you don't 100% agree or see eye to eye. And it's hard to have a calm, measured conversation in that type of moment. I get that. No big deal. But the way that these players embraced Draymond after the game, as Cat was storming off the floor, I think that is a big deal. And he's going to get asked about it. He and the Knicks are going to get asked about it tomorrow. And I'll be interested to see what the replies are. Cat tried very hard to keep it all about basketball. Lisa Salters, poor form by you. Trying to ask him about, off the court drama in an in-game interview. That shit was weak, man. You don't do that in-game. First of all, you shouldn't be asking anything nuanced or about anything that has anything to do without basketball, other than basketball. You should not be asking any questions like that in-game. The players and coaches do not want to do these in-game interviews. You should be very, very grateful that the person is taking the time to speak to you and try to ask him something like that in game. I thought that was weak. I thought that was poor form on her part. But Kat continued to handle it about, hey, I'm going to make it about the Knicks and what we need to do. But you could see it, that it meant something more to him. I don't think his teammates felt the same way. At least not all of them. Not the guys that were hugging and dapping up Draymond after the game. Draymond's a piece of shit. Fuck that guy. And these Knicks, man, I don't know. We just don't. There's something missing. Something missing. As Susan's mother on Seinfeld said, there's something missing, all right. Oh, man. This week is going to be interesting. We got Miami. Then, like I said, we go across the country. We go out to the Spurs. Then we come back. We play Charlotte. Then we play like Dallas. Knicks got to get rolling here. And they need to stack up some wins. Make sure that they keep the 3 seed. They don't totally free fall while Brunson is gone. And then, like I said, man, first round, if it ends up being Detroit, that is not going to be an easy series. And if the Knicks were to lose in the first round as the 3 seed to a 6-seeded Detroit, I think that the entire season is one to forget. I know we have the 4th best team in the record in the league. I know we do. We play well against the bottom rung teams. But we are now, I want to say like 0-11 or what is it? 0-9. But then if you add the Warriors, who they're not in those upper echelon teams, but clearly have looked like that since they got Jimmy Butler. They've beaten us twice as well. It's not a lot to be excited about if you have any aspirations that this team could possibly win a championship. Doesn't feel that way right now. And to me, more upsetting than that is the fact that we don't seem to have the edge, the camaraderie, or the brotherhood that this team had last year. More talent, but missing that extra something. Knicks got to get it together, man. Tomorrow night against the Heat, I'm hoping that we see the Knicks come out with some aggressiveness and some passion, and they run them off the floor. But the Knicks here recently, they ain't been really running too many people off the floor. Even the games that they win against teams that we feel like we should beat end up being close, and games that we have to pull out late. And pulling out those late games, I know Bridges hit a fantastic buzzer beater against Portland, but that's going to be a tough thing to do consistently without Captain Clutch, Jalen Brunson himself, and his ability to make it happen late. We need Bridges to be more aggressive. We need, even when Brunson comes back, for us to not just run ISO Jalen down the stretch. We got to move the ball more. We need Josh Hart to continue shooting and hopefully make some threes. And we need Karl Anthony Towns to take over a game late and feel this team's victory. God, I wanted to beat Draymond so bad. I wanted to beat that team so bad. I wanted them to give it to that motherfucker and to have him not only win, but to have his moment where, you know, he makes a layup and then he's given the good night. Man, that shit had me fired up last night. And I hope it has this Knicks team fired up. And I hope they come out Monday with, like I said, that edge. And I hope that moving forward, we realize that, hey, man, we're somewhat getting punked by these elite teams. It's not a good look. It's not who you want to be. It's not what this city and this fan base deserves as far as their team. So they got some things to figure out. I should say. Tom Thibodeau, honestly, man, you know, with Stephen A saying stuff like, you know, he's in major trouble, with Bridges coming out and saying that he's talked to him about playing less minutes, him and Josh Hart having these type of back and forths. I know that we just signed him to a big extension, but Dolan is willing to spend money. I know that he has a great relationship with Leon Rose, with Jalen Brunson. But if this team doesn't figure something out as far as their overall will, and if they don't start to schematically look more modern and more prepared, you got to start asking about Tibbs, man. Got to start asking about Tibbs. And when you get the Stephen A's of the world, fuck Channing Frye, but when you get the Stephen A's of the world going on soliloquies about their lack of playing the bench and the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau running his teams into the ground, it's not good. And when you get the Iron Man of the NBA sitting down with Steph and Bondi and saying, hey, yeah, you know, we need to play our defense more and our starters less, it's not good, Tibbs. It's not good. And I'm not, the minutes police, I think it's somewhat overblown sometimes. This year, I have felt like there is something to it a little bit as far as us being so high in minutes per game for our starters and having 3 guys in the top 10. People that throw out the total minute stat, they're idiots. That's a cumulative stat. Our guys have been relatively healthy. That's why we're so high in that one. But Bridges, OG, Josh Hart, all being in the top 10. Some of these late games where we're up big and these guys, the other team is called off the dogs. They're not even trying to win anymore, and we still got our starters out there. Some of those, man, you know, gotta say, I get it. I get why people continue to have this narrative around this guy. And the other narrative that follows him is he will pull your team out of the mud, but he can't get them to the mountaintop. I hate to say it, but that might be the case here with this current Knicks team. I hope not. I hope Tibbs continues to evolve. I hope this Knicks team and these players look themselves in the mirror and take some accountability, and they figure some things out, and they bring it on a nightly basis like they have not thus far this season. I hope Brunson comes back healthy, and we can take this improved defense and match it with his masterful offense, and that takes us to another level. I definitely hope that Bridges becomes more aggressive, and I hope that OG continues to shoot the ball like he has of late. Lots of hopes, lots of dreams. We'll see what happens tomorrow night against Miami. Do the Knicks come out, handle, and take care of business? Do they make this game way closer than it needs to be? Or do they find a way to lose and officially make Knicks fans feel like the sky is falling? Be interesting to see. It's your boy Nick on Knicks.